I have a question that I'm going to answer. It has to do with what do you do if you have a gap in your resume? And more importantly, you don't have a way to justify the gap. So I'm going to have to, I guess, intuit what this question means. I did ask the person to clarify, but it's been a couple of days. I don't want to ask them to elaborate or bug them about it. So the question is how do you justify a gap in your resume if you don't have a good explanation? So I don't know what that necessarily means if you don't have a good reason. Maybe they think that you have to go to school or you have to be taking care of a family member or something like that. Like I don't know what constitutes a good reason. I think if you have a gap in your resume, it's really no one's business. The most important thing is just how do you explain it, in the sense that how did you exit your last job? So if you have a gap on your resume where you're working at a company, let's say Amazon, because I think they laid off a lot of folks in the past few months. I don't think, I know, but just out of habit, I said I think. So, if you're working until October and right now you're unemployed, that's not a terrible gap in your resume, and I don't think you have to really say anything or justify it. It all depends on how you left your last opportunity. So if you've been unemployed for 4 months, but you were laid off from your last job, that's a different story than you have a 4-month gap in your resume and you were fired from your last job, or you have a 4-month gap and you quit your last job. You understand? I don't think people have to explain their gaps in the sense that you need a very justified reason. There are a lot of reasons people have gaps in their resumes. I have gaps in my resume, and at the end of the day, if you can just speak intelligently on the value you can add, you should be fine. And I say should be fine because it's not always on you to justify your gap. It's on you to justify or explain your value. It is on the company or the employer to recognize that value. So, if you find yourself being firmly honest, they shouldn't really ask why you're unemployed unless they feel that it could hurt the company, or there is some cause for them to ask. If they do, just be very frank. If you are terminated, please have a good reason. It probably won't hurt if they see a lot of other opportunities on your resume, a lot of other jobs where you were at one company for 3 years, you're at another company for 3 years, then you were at this company for 1 year or half a year. If they see you got terminated, they can say, you know what, this person still has many years of experience that are long-term. They do stick around. So if they were terminated, there is a chance it was a bad boss. But it does hurt you early in your career if this is your first job and you had it less than a year, or if it was your second job and you had it less than a year, because then they don't have enough background to give you the benefit of the doubt. So if you have gaps in your resume, the gap is not, that itself is not damning evidence. It's really more just about the context. And when it goes into context, you can just tell them you had personal family reasons. You can tell them that you wanted to take some time for professional development. You can tell them that you were laid off. Right now, there's a lot of layoffs happening. Not that I'm telling anyone to lie. If you were not laid off, please don't say that. But if you were laid off and you feel like that wasn't a good reason, you can be honest. If you were terminated, find a way to present it in a positive light, right? You want to, present yourself as a good candidate who's an asset. You don't want to present yourself as a liability, because managers do look out for liabilities. They look out for anyone who could, be a potential lawsuit or conflict in the future. So regardless of the reason, just find a very good, concise way to explain what happened. Try not to give too much information, especially if it's a personal reason. And if you do professional development, please at least have some idea what courses you took, what subjects you learned, because you never know. Some people take off from work. They don't like where they are in their career. They want to pivot. It's hard to pivot if you're working full-time and learning a skill on the side. Some people make the decision to quit a job. It's a great job. They're happy. But they recognize that, hey, I can either learn something after work, I can work full-time, learn something in the evenings, and it'll take me a year to learn it, or I can quit my job and learn this within 2-3 months, right? So different strokes for different folks. People make different career decisions all the time. So if you have a gap in your resume, I wish I knew what this meant if you don't have a good reason. You could also go in a different way where maybe this is someone who has been asked about their gap and they've given explanations and that they haven't been accepted, I would just advise them that you should just, see what is your story, what is your pitch, and how are you presenting it. So a gap in your resume should not prevent you from getting a job. It should not prevent you from getting interviews. At the end of the day, everyone has a story, and a good company that's worth its grain of salt should give you a chance and ask you, hey, what is this gap about?